Welcome back to Angie and Christie Right Now. We are absolutely thrilled to welcome back a very special guest, the first author to join us on the podcast, Blakely Chorpenning. Her talent for crafting immersive, emotional stories left a lasting impression with Angie and me. And now, with the release of her latest novel, Requiem, the second book in the Sinners and Saints series, we couldn't be more excited to catch up with her again and dive deeper into the gripping world of vampires, danger, and tough choices. Please join us in giving a warm welcome back to Blakely Chorpenning. Yay! Thank you so much for coming back on.
Thank you for having me.
We were super excited to see that Requiem came out. It actually came out in September. I don't know if you remember, but I remember very distinctly when you talked about Sinner the first time, I got goosebumps from that story. It was like, oh my gosh. And then went to get the story immediately, read it, and wow. And then when we saw that the second one was coming out, I was like, Angie and I were like, oh, she has to come on. So we're super excited about it.
And I'm 35 pages into Requiem, and I'm excited because some of the questions I had from the end of the last book are going to be resolved in this book, and so I'm really excited to find out what happens to Alice and Lo and all her friends. So I guess Lo's kind of a friend now. Yeah, not spoiler.
Relationship.
So do you want to start maybe by telling us a little bit about Sinner and then follow through into Requiem for those of you who haven't had a chance to read Sinner yet?
Yeah, well, Sinner, it begins with Alice, who is, in her like late teens, early 20s. She's living back at home. She had gone off to college, and then she ends up, having an accident. She comes home and she's really, her anxiety is high, and as the story unfolds you kind of realize that there are a few different things at play. She feels different. She hasn't been herself at all since her accident, and she just feels this change on like a molecular level. So it kind of follows her through this change, and it leads her into the world of vampires. But she also, during that same period of time, there's something else going on, and you're not really sure as the reader what it is. You just know that it's some sort of haunting or just paranormal activity, and you're kind of left not knowing. So she's not only battling actual physical changes to her body, she's also battling something that's trying to harm her, and it's scaring all of the other monsters. That's my cat.
It's kind of like reading the book when you hear the little bumps in the night. Like, definitely don't read this at night, everyone.
Oh, you need the lights on when you're reading this, and you really put that main character through the ringer, that poor girl.
Yes. Yeah, and the reader as well, because you're very good at describing the scene, and you really bring in all the senses. And at times, because it's kind of, it's kind of gory, it's dark, it's scary, it's a real, you feel the horror and the terror and her anxiety, and you just feel it and so that's one of the things I was wanting to know is, when you were writing it, how did you immerse yourself into the story? How did you immerse yourself in that darkness and kind of bring it and put it on the page?
Well, actually, I kind of pulled from, I think, that feeling that all of us have when, all of a sudden we're left in like a room dark, unsure, or when we were children and we were going to sleep and we felt like we heard something underneath the bed. And, growing up, I've always had very, very vivid dreams. And when I would go through different phases of, different things that scared me, or different, I would wake up and I would feel that I heard these noises, or that I saw something in my doorway, and and it was just so frightening. I remember it would just freeze me in place in my bed. I wouldn't be able to roll over. I wouldn't be able to scream for my mom or dad. I would just be frozen in fear. And most of the time now as an adult, I look back and I'm like, oh, those were dreams, but they just took on a life of their own. And so I wanted to go back to that, because I thought that's something that everybody has in common. It doesn't matter who you are, where you grew up, everybody has at least a moment or two where they remember waking up and just being paralyzed with fear, or, you know, or doing something that just scared them so much because they were unsure of what they were walking into. And, you know, I felt that this kind of, I just took all of those feelings and I threw them at Alice, and I feel like she's dealt with it pretty well.
That poor girl, that poor girl. But when you, so when I'm a, I don't watch scary movies a lot, and I don't read scary books. Like your book is about as scary as I will read, because like horror books, like I can't sleep at night. But when you're the actual writer of something like that, do you dream about it at night? Like how does that work? Like do you get scared?
Well, a lot of the things that she battled, and a lot of, I don't want to give too much away, but different things that she saw or felt, I actually took that from my own dreams, because I have night terrors. I have all my life. My daughter has night terrors, and but when I was writing Sinner, because I was so focused in on all of these feelings, it actually was bringing back some of the night terrors. And so I would wake up some nights and I would see a big like gargoyle demon standing in my doorway, and you know, and I would be like, oh, I feel like I conjured you up by sitting here writing about all day long. But this time around, you know, because I kind of felt like I had the upper hand. So there were some nights where I would just sit there and stare at a weird demon staring back at me, you know, and then other times, like some of the ways that Lo presents herself, I took that as well from some of my dreams.
Yeah, she's quite the character.
So was it cathartic in some way, putting it on the page, you know, taking it from your mind and then transposing it on a page? Did it kind of make it be less scary once it was someplace where you could just read it in black and white? It's no longer just in the ether, but now it's on the page. Like, did you feel any differently about it?
Maybe a little bit, just because now as an adult, you know, I understand it. I know it's my mind just running things back to me, and my mind is just weird. But I guess it definitely is different than from being a child. But at the same time, usually when I do have a night terror and I'm waking up, it's, you know, it is scary while it's happening. But then I look back, and now even when I watch movies, when I read something, or even knowing when I'm watching a movie, this might bring like a night terror on, I get a little bit of a giddy feeling. Now I dare things. I'm like, I dare you to scare me. I dare you to like freeze me like I'm a, you know, a 10-year-old laying in bed. So
I love that. Yeah, because you're confronting it, facing it head on, and yeah, that's pretty cool.
I like it. You finished Sinner and you published it, and now you're going into the second part of this series. I know from our previous podcast, we know that you're a pantser, so you just sit at your computer and write. So how did that go? Like, did the story flow? Did you know exactly what was going into? Well, maybe not exactly, but did you know how you wanted it to end? Like, how different was it from writing Sinner?
I definitely felt more connected to all of the characters. And it was actually nice this time, because in Sinner, I wanted to keep some of the mystery of a lot of the characters. And I know a lot of people were kind of frustrated because they walked away not having these answers they really wanted. So it was nice in Requiem to actually sit down and say, you know what, now I get to kind of delve in with this character, and you know, the readers are going to understand them that much more, and maybe they'll understand some of their motivations. And even especially when they're acting, you know, cruel, then there's kind of that understanding as well as to what's propelled them to become who they are now.
Yeah, because I noticed that the characters, I mean, the saints and sinners, you know, the theme is there, you know, you can see it in the characters. They're not just, you know, good or bad, they're a blend, you know, they're great, they're normal people who are now more than what they used to be. They're monsters, you know, they in their minds they believe they're monsters. They do things based on their emotions and, you know, some of the stuff that happened to them in the past. And I really love the way that you made them feel real, that you made them feel like, you know, anyone on the street could just walk up and, you know, be something other, you know, you just wouldn't know, you know. And so I really love that about your characters. And I was just curious, who is your favorite character out of all of them?
I would have to say it's a toss up. I really love Alice, of course, but I also love Bunny. She's like really dear to my heart. So anytime somebody's mean, I'm like, don't be mean to Bunny. And I know I'm right, but I'm like, no, like Bunny deserves something good to happen.
I agree. I also love her brother Lindy. I think he's very sweet and he's so careful with her. Like she goes through some things, and he sees her go through some things and the things that she puts her entire family through, and he's still so, good to her. So that's like, I wanted to absolutely say something about your characterization. Like, I agree 100% with Angie. Like, you do such a great job of making us care for these characters. It's awesome. You pick up the book and immediately something's wrong with Alice and you care for her immediately. So awesome job on that. Awesome job.
Thank you so much. Alice has a lot of struggles. Not only is she struggling with, paranormal activity, not only is she having to struggle with like her physical changes of vampirism, also has OCD. I wrote that in there because myself included and some people in my family, we all have different levels and different forms of OCD. And I just thought it was important to note that if you have OCD, it doesn't mean that it's a superhero power, but it also doesn't mean that it's, the end of the world. Sometimes it can just be a part of your day. And sometimes it's just a part of, your moments. And for Alice, she uses her OCD as a form to calm and like just quell her anxieties, especially in these supernatural moments where it's like she doesn't know which way to turn, what to do. She doesn't even know who she can trust. So she knows that she can at least trust in this moment and be able to sit and just calm herself, even if it's, for hours or minutes, that she has that time. So there is a lot of bathroom moments in both Sinner and Requiem, which might be weird, but I mean, it's one of those times where, sometimes if you're having a bad day, you just go in the bathroom and you just stand there for a minute, or you go through your makeup, or maybe you sit there and brush your hair for 20 minutes, or you're just taking that time. It's like you're just shutting the door from the world. And so I feel like she has a lot of moments where she ends up going in the bathroom just to read ingredients off of the backs of all of her bottles that she has in there, all of the shampoo. And there's actually in Requiem a really sweet moment that she has in the bathroom, but she realizes that Jessic actually thought ahead and was hoping that she would come back. And she has a moment where she realizes that he had done something really sweet just for her that maybe nobody else would have thought to do. And I won't say what that is.
I
Really,
like those two together. They're really cute together.
No, I'm 35 pages in and I'm having a sweet moment right now. And, and I'm sure Blakely knows what I'm talking about.
Yep.
How long did it take you to write this now? And like, was it faster than the first one? And did you have to edit as much, or did you, like, how did the writing of it go?
Well, after, I like to go through first. I don't know why I do this. I will just start writing a sequel, and I'll get like 30,000 words in, and then I'm like, wait a minute, let me rein it in, let me make sure that things are going to match up. So then I'll stop, I go back through, I'll reread the first one just to make sure that I'm on track, because I usually don't write my series. I don't write the books in them back to back. I'm sure that probably aggravates people, but I bounce around from different series. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't like remembering something that maybe I cut out and didn't keep, or, a tiny little change that sometimes I'll go through a whole book and I'll go back and I'll change one tiny thing in the whole book. So I always have that fear later that, I don't want to remember the tiny thing that I cut out and think it's still in there. So I go through and I'll just sit down with my paper and I'll sit there and I'll write down things that maybe I had a question about and double check everything. And then after that, it's on. Then I'll sit down and I'm really in the zone at that point. And so then I can't get it out fast enough. And so I usually know certain plot points that I want to happen. I don't know when I sit down how the characters will get to all of those different points until I'm actually writing it out. But that, I feel that's when I do my best work, because that's when all of a sudden when I had maybe something and I thought, oh, this isn't going to work out, I'm going to have to change this. And then all of a sudden in one of those moments that, I didn't know was going to happen, all of a sudden I'm like, wow, it all came together right there. And so love those moments.
Especially when you're a pantser, because those moments are surprising a lot of times, or entertaining, or just in your it's kind of odd. So yeah, that's pretty cool. I love the fact that you have to go back, that and remember, because especially when you're writing a whole nother book based on a previous book, and if it's been a few years, yeah, you could definitely miss something, and then someone will point out, hey, in the book you wrote before, you did so and so, and yeah, it's a tricky situation trying to get it written out, but you did a fabulous job, and I'm like totally enjoying it. So I can't wait to see what happens next, especially there's a few questions that I want to have answered, and you said that you're planning on delving into those characters a little more, and I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, so like without giving us any spoilers, can you give us a little more about what happens to Alice in Requiem?
Okay, when I first started writing it, I always want there to be like a deeper theme in whatever book it is, and not every character has to be trying to attain what this is, but in this case, it kind of seems like they were. So originally, I was just going to have the name of the book be Saint, and then I started thinking, and literally right before I started the publishing process with everyone, I changed it, and I said it should be Requiem, because I started doing some research, and in Catholicism they have a Requiem prayer, and it's specifically a prayer for those people who have gone to purgatory, and they believe that if those people in purgatory still believe in God, then God, there's a chance that God could actually redeem them and send them to heaven, so that they could actually get out of purgatory. And I thought that's a beautiful idea. And especially, a lot of times people will go, oh, that religion and this religion, and they're so tough on everybody. And I thought, but here's like this little piece of beautiful, and you could have an entire church somewhere doing an entire service for all the souls that maybe, felt that they sinned or did something wrong. And here's an entire, congregation and an entire church hoping that they can still find their way and find peace in the afterlife. And I feel like in Alice's case, they're all vampires, but that question is still there, and they're still wondering. I brought it up in Sinner when they're talking about like near-death experiences, and some of them had them, some of them didn't. And so I wanted to continue that theme of pretty much of just her trying to figure out, is this something that is attainable, or is she completely lost? Is she just considered a sinner and that's it? And, because you have all of these different levels of sins, and then you have people who have sinned, but now they're trying to repent. And then you have other people who are just very happy continuing on to just sin all the things. And, so I really wanted to bring that into book 2. And so I do tie it into a few places, because they're all really just looking for peace. And they don't know if they're going to find that in a different afterlife, or if they can find that in their kind of second life as a vampire. And so it kind of brings it up for a few of the main characters to explore. And I kind of leave it open to interpretation as the readers go through, so they can kind of make up their own minds about certain things.
Yeah, I noticed in Sinner that you talked about the golden warmth, and how some of the characters felt it and some of them didn't, and how it helped some of them to keep their humanity, and others, even though they didn't feel it, they still had their humanity, and the choices that they made based on what happened in the past. And I mean, you have some really complex characters, and they go through some things in the books, and I did like that concept of how do you keep your humanity when you're in a position where you feed on blood, you're a vampire, you have it's that mentality, and I love the way you did that.
Thank you.
How is this series going then? Are we expecting a third book in the series? How long do you think it'll be?
I think there will definitely be a third book. I have a few others. I'm going to try and finish my Elkline series first. I've had a few people really, really waiting on that running series, and I thought, I better do everybody a solid and just at least so they know that I'm good for an ending. But I just in a lot of things I do, I don't like the end of things. Like a lot of times if I'm watching a TV series, I could watch it for 8 years, and then I might not watch the final episode for another 10 or 15 years, because I'm like, no, we'll just keep it going in my mind. I don't need to know how it ended. And I do that with book series too. I can read through an entire series, and then I might stop on the last 40 pages of the last book. Yeah. And I might never read it, or I might spend another 5 or 10 years and then I'll say, okay, maybe now it's time to sit down and read it.
I am the same way. I do not like endings. And especially when it seems like there's a good place to end it, like they're happy and, I don't need to find it fall apart at the very end on the last page. Like, I don't need to know that. I can stop right here and I'm perfectly fine with that. I don't need to, I just don't. And so, yeah, especially with a series that I really, really love. Like, I'm good with that. So.
You two are two peas in a pod.
I just them as just going and doing their things, and if they're fighting evil, I just want to think of them and all of their friends still doing the same thing. I don't like it when everything wraps up and all of a sudden it's different and you're like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I do have some ideas for the final book for Alice, but there's still a few things that I'm working on in my mind, so I'll have to let it kind of percolate, and then one day I'll go, oh, that's it. I have all the components, and then I'll sit down and start it.
So how long was the space between when you wrote published Sinner, and and now Requiem? Like, was there a significant period of time between the two books?
Yeah, I wrote it in 2019, Sinner. And then I published it in 2020, and I started Requiem. But again, it was one of those, I started it, and then there was a time where I'm like, I feel like I'm missing something. So I put it down a few times. But then once I got the first 30,000 words, I was off. I had everything. But I really worked on that the last bit of last year. So it was done in 2023. And then it was just pretty much going through the publishing process this year and just getting it all shiny for everybody.
And we appreciate it. Please enjoy the trailer of Blakely Chorpenning's first book in the Saints and Sinners series, entitled Sinner.
Hi, I'm Blakely Chorpenning. This is my book, Sinner, in the Sinners and Saints series. Sinner takes you on a gritty ride through the heart of obsessive-compulsive darkness. Step into the shadows of Alice's unraveling world as a twist of fate thrusts her into the supernatural realm of vampires, where the allure of blood and an inescapable destiny beckons. But Alice has more than vampires to fear. Something insidious stalks her from the shadows, gripping her heart, playing at her anxieties, leaving her gasping for her sanity. Experience the pulse-pounding intensity of Sinner, where the line between friend and foe blurs, leaving Alice in question who she can trust in a world where even the shadows have teeth.
And we want to thank you again for coming on. We want to thank you for writing Requiem. We cannot wait. Well, I can't wait to start it. I know Angie's already started it. And we will be waiting patiently for the number 3 to finish the trilogy, I guess you would call it, right? But thank you so much for coming on. And please, when the third one comes out, or when any of your other books come out, please come back on. We love talking to you. We love speaking with you. And we will have you back on one time because we really want to go dive into the self-publishing. So we will definitely have you back on at some point. But
absolutely. And I would just like to say, for anybody who reads Requiem, just in case if anybody's really claustrophobic, or if they have maybe some bug issues, certain phobias, maybe to think twice about this book, or maybe to just read it in the daylight and
outside under a tree in a field of flowers.
That's right. Absolutely. The happy place.
All right, everyone, we want to thank Blakely for coming on. And if you like these videos, please like and subscribe and click the notification bell so you know when all our videos are coming out. Also, Blakely was on last year and she did a fabulous interview. If you want to watch her full video, at the end of this, there's going to be a little box that pops up on the screen. Click it and it'll go directly to that video, so you don't even have to try and search for it. So
excellent. Perfect.
But thank you guys so much for having me on again. This is always so fun.